Why are you hiding your phone like that? My brother laughed, snatching it from my hand before I could react. His tone was playful, but his eyes were already scanning the screen. Then, just like that, everything stopped. We were at the Thanksgiving table, my entire family gathered, the candles flickering, silver clinking, and plates filled with untouched turkey and tension. My mother sat at the head of the table like some suburban queen, sipping wine from a glass she hadn't let go of all evening. My father, across from her, glanced up once my brother's expression changed. "No way," Daniel said, standing up as he turned the phone toward them. $10 million? All eyes landed on me. I didn't speak. I couldn't. "What is this?" my mom barked. Her voice was sharp enough to slice through glass. "It's her account," Daniel said. "She's got over $10 million sitting in there. Just like that." My cousin choked on her drink. My aunt gasped. My mom's wine glass hit the table with a dull thud. And then came the line I'd never forget. "Well," my mother said, voice lowering into something far colder than the room temperature. "You obviously don't need all that money. Your brother's building his future. You should give it to him. He deserves it more." Deserves it more? I hadn't said a word. Not when they used to laugh at my small startup. Not when they told me I'd never make it without someone holding my hand. Not even when my father said I was wasting my 20s playing CEO in her pajamas. And now they wanted my success. Daniel smirked. "She probably got lucky or something. I mean, I'm the one who always had the potential in this family." My hands trembled under the table, but I gripped the napkin and smiled tightly. "You should listen to your mother," my dad added flatly, not even looking up. "We raised you. If one of us succeeds, we all do. That's what families do." Funny. That hadn't been their energy when I was working 16-hour days building my brand from my kitchen counter. But I still didn't argue. I said nothing. Instead, I stood slowly and looked around the table. All of them, my aunts, uncles, cousins, even Daniel's fiancé, stared like they were waiting for me to hand over a check and say, "Sure, take it." I turned to my mother and said calmly, "I'm thankful for everything this year, including the clarity." Then I left. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I walked out into the night, got into my car, and drove home, my heart racing but my mind crystal clear. Because 2 days later, Daniel was hosting his engagement party. The one my parents funded. The one they insisted I attend for appearances. And I planned to give them exactly that. An appearance they would never forget. The ballroom shimmered with soft golden light. Crystal chandeliers swayed slightly above the crowd, casting perfect halos over perfectly made-up faces. My brother's engagement party looked like a magazine spread, plated hors d'oeuvres, violinists tucked into a corner, a massive engagement cake so tall it needed its own table. Everyone looked like they belonged. Everyone but me. I stood near the entrance in a sleek navy jumpsuit, not too flashy, not too quiet. My hair was pinned, my lipstick soft, my heels sharp. I didn't come to blend in. I came to finish something. My father approached first. He didn't greet me, didn't smile, just leaned in close and muttered through clenched teeth, "Don't cause a scene. This is your brother's night." Then, like I was nothing more than a possible problem, he grabbed my wrist. I didn't pull away. I just looked at his hand. Slowly, he released it and turned his back. I walked further inside. People whispered as I passed, some smiling like I was a guest, others nudging each other as they pieced together what had happened at Thanksgiving. Apparently, my family hadn't kept the outburst as private as they thought. I could feel it. The room pulsed with speculation. At the front of the hall, Daniel and his fiancée, Sarah, posed for photos. She wore a silver gown. He wore entitlement like a second skin. My parents flanked them, all smiles, pretending the last 2 days hadn't even happened. But then the lights dimmed slightly, and the host tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he smiled, "it's time for a toast." He turned toward Daniel. And what better person to open this beautiful evening than his loving sister? Daniel's face fell. My mother's smile twitched. My dad shook his head slightly. But it was too late. The host handed me the mic. I walked up slowly. I didn't race. I didn't stumble. I took the mic with a soft smile and stepped forward onto the stage. The guests fell silent. You could hear forks being set down, glasses pausing midair. I looked directly at Daniel first, then at my parents. Then I began. 2 days ago, I said, voice steady, my family found out something unexpected about me. I paused. Instead of congratulations, I was met with accusations. Instead of celebration, I was told to hand it over. Because apparently, success is only allowed when it benefits the ones who doubted you most. Gasps. A couple whispers rippled through the crowd. My mother stood, trying to interrupt, but I raised one hand gently, not rudely. No need to panic, Mom. I'm not here to ruin anyone's night. I turned to the crowd. In fact, I continued. Tonight is actually a celebration. For the couple, of course, but also for growth. I turned back toward my family. I built a company. I built it while you all laughed. While you told me I wasn't enough. While you said I was a burden. And now, I built it into something worth $10 million. The room held its breath. I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to say, thank you. Murmurs again. Because every time I was belittled, every time I wasn't invited to important dinners or told I was just a phase, it gave me fire. And I turned that fire into something real. I looked at Sarah and softened my voice. To Sarah, I hope you have better luck navigating this family than I did. And if not, call me. Some people laughed gently. Daniel's smile was gone. And to everyone else, I paused. Don't ever let someone else measure what you deserve. Build quietly. And when it's time, speak clearly. I set the mic down. The room didn't explode. It didn't collapse. It froze. Silent. Still. But the shift? It was permanent. I walked off the stage without looking back. My heels clicked softly across the hardwood as whispers erupted behind me, first hushed, then rising. Someone clapped. Just once. Then another joined. It wasn't thunderous, but it was real. And it came from strangers. Not family. Daniel didn't follow me. My parents didn't stop me. I reached the exit doors of the ballroom just in time to hear the music kick back in, a desperate attempt by the host to smooth over the disruption. But the damage was done. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who needed to be fixed. Outside, the air was cool. Crisp. I breathed in deeply as if I'd been underwater for years and finally surfaced. I was halfway to my car when I heard someone jog behind me. It wasn't Daniel. Hey. It was Sarah. I turned, expecting confrontation, maybe anger or disappointment. Instead, she looked thoughtful. She hesitated. I didn't know it was like that. Like what? Your family. How they treat you. Daniel never talks about you. I figured there was distance, but I said nothing. She looked down at her silver heels, then back up. I just wanted to say, that was brave. I would have crumbled on that stage. You might surprise yourself, I said softly. She nodded, then looked over her shoulder. They're not handling it well. Especially your mom. That's fine. I didn't say it for them. Then who? For me. Sarah gave a small, genuine smile. You're stronger than I thought. I've had a lot of practice. She started to leave but turned back. If you ever want to get coffee, just girl to girl, no family drama. I'd like that. And just like that, a strange warmth sparked in my chest. Maybe not everyone connected to them was broken. I went home to silence. My apartment sat high above the city, glowing with soft golden lighting and peace. I poured myself a glass of water, not wine, and kicked off my shoes. I was about to settle onto the couch when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message simply said, "You think you're better than us now? We made you. Don't forget where you came from." I didn't respond. Not even when it was followed up by another. "You've always been selfish." I muted the number and dropped my phone face down. But 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I tensed. 3 slow knocks. I opened the door cautiously, half expecting my mother in full drama mode. But instead I saw my uncle. Uncle Ray. The only one in the family who'd ever spoken to me like an adult. The one who'd pulled me aside when I was 16 and said, "They don't see you. That doesn't mean you're not worth seeing." He looked older than I remembered, his face a little more weathered, his jacket too light for the season. He held a paper bag in one hand. "I brought pie," he said quietly. I stared at him. "Pumpkin. From the bakery you used to love. Figured you probably didn't get a slice before things exploded." I stepped aside without a word and let him in. He didn't say much, just sat on the couch and handed me the bag. "You did the right thing," he said after a long silence. I wasn't sure. "They've always thought silence meant submission," he said. "You reminded them it can mean preparation." He paused, then added, "I was proud to be your uncle tonight." Tears welled in my eyes, not because of the toast or the fight, but because someone finally understood the weight of holding it all in for so long. "I just didn't want to hurt anyone," I whispered. "You didn't. You told the truth. And they chose to be hurt by it." That night, I sat in the quiet, eating a slice of pie on the floor with my uncle beside me. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about family politics. We talked about small things. About peace. About books. About how the city looked so beautiful from up high. And when he left, he hugged me and said, "Don't let their chaos drag you back in." I promised I wouldn't. But what came next? I never expected. Because 2 mornings later, I found a sealed envelope outside my door. No return address. No signature. Just one word written on it. Redemption. The envelope lay like a ghost at my door. Cream-colored. Thick. Handwritten. No name. No return address. Just one word on the front, in bold black ink. All caps. Redemption. I picked it up slowly, half expecting it to be some passive-aggressive stunt from my mother, or worse, another veiled insult from Daniel. But as I held it in my hands, there was a strange stillness in the air, like the world was waiting to see how I'd react. I walked back into my apartment and sat at the dining table, the letter before me untouched like a ticking bomb. It wasn't heavy, but it felt like it carried weight. I opened it. There was no long letter inside, just a single page, folded with sharp precision. It read, "She didn't deserve what they did to her, but you deserve to know this before they bury it again. Meet me, Saturday, noon, 9th and Beechwood. Coffee cart under the blue umbrella. Come alone. No name, no signature. Just that." My stomach twisted, not from fear, but from a deeper kind of dread. The kind you get when you realize there's more to the story, and someone out there is holding the missing pages. For a moment, I considered throwing it away, ignoring it, moving on. I had already done enough, said enough, and changed everything. Why walk into more? But curiosity is a strange creature, especially when mixed with quiet rage and years of unanswered questions. So I waited. And when Saturday came, I went. It was cold that morning. One of those still, gray days when the sky hangs low and the city feels like it's whispering secrets to itself. I parked a block away and walked slowly, my coat buttoned to the top, fingers tucked into my sleeves. My heels clicked lightly on the wet pavement. Each step toward the corner felt heavier than the last. When I reached the coffee cart, there it was, the blue umbrella, slightly faded, flapping gently in the breeze. A man stood there, early 60s, maybe older, gray beard, worn-out coat, kind, cautious eyes. He didn't wave me over. He just waited. When I approached, he nodded once. "Black coffee?" he asked. I nodded, unsure if this was still part of the game. He poured, passed it gently into my hands, then leaned back against the cart, as if bracing for something hard to say. "I knew your grandfather," he said finally. My breath caught. My mother's father? He nodded. "I worked for him. A long time ago. Back before the family money got complicated." That word, complicated, carried 1,000 unspoken truths. "He used to bring you into the office sometimes," the man continued. "Little girl with wild curls and oversized glasses. You'd sit at the corner table, draw houses on printer paper." A memory struck me, faint, like smoke, my tiny hands clutching markers, a desk bigger than me, my grandfather's laugh in the distance. "You remember," he said, catching my expression. I nodded slowly. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thin leather folder. "This," he tapped it gently, "is what your family has spent the last decade pretending doesn't exist." I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside were copies of bank transfers, legal documents, a will, but not the one my parents showed us. This one had a note attached in my grandfather's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. For her. Only her. She will know why. Tears blurred my vision. The man continued softly. "Your grandfather trusted you. Not because you were perfect. Because you had heart. You were the only one who visited him without asking for anything." I closed the folder slowly. "What do they know about this?" "Your father knew. So did your mother. They forged an updated version of the will, removed your share, moved accounts into new names. But this version was registered, notarized, and backed by a firm I still work with. The law will honor it. All you have to do is file it." Silence hung between us, heavy and trembling. "I don't want revenge," I whispered. "Then don't take it," he said. "Take your place. That's not revenge. That's justice." He sipped his coffee. "You think silence is weakness. But sometimes it's the strategy that gives you strength when it counts most." I went home with the folder in my hands and a war in my heart. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I walked through my apartment for hours, touching every surface like I was anchoring myself back to something real. I looked out at the city and thought about all the years I had clawed my way into the light, unaware someone else, someone kind, had already lit a path for me. And then, with one email and 2 phone calls, I set the plan in motion. Not to destroy them, but to stand where I was meant to. The courtroom was not the kind of place I had ever imagined myself in, not as a plaintiff, not even as a witness. But as I sat there, papers in a leather folder before me, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was calm, almost eerily so. Across the aisle, my mother and father sat stiff in tailored suits, looking anywhere but at me. Their lawyer whispered furiously between them, but they didn't respond. My brother hadn't shown up. Of course he hadn't. It wasn't about him anymore. It never really was. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. He flipped through the will, paused at the signature, double-checked the notary stamp, then looked up at me, then at them. "This will is both older and legally binding. The amended version submitted by the defendants appears to have discrepancies in signature patterns and notarization dates. I find the evidence compelling enough to move this forward." My mother flinched. My father didn't move. The judge continued, "Unless otherwise contested in full trial, the assets outlined in the original will shall revert to the rightful heir, Ms. Eliana Hart." He banged the gavel once, sharp and final. Just like that, it was over. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I stood and gathered my folder, bowed my head respectfully, and walked out. My parents didn't follow, and I didn't look back. The news spread through the family like wildfire. Some cousins reached out, full of guilt-laced compliments and shallow apologies. Others stayed silent. Some called me brave. Some called me ungrateful. But I didn't need their validation. What mattered came a week later, when I walked into a building I hadn't visited in over a year, my own company headquarters. The receptionist jumped to her feet. "Ms. Hart," she gasped, surprised. "We weren't told." "No need," I smiled. "I just wanted to see home. Because this place, built brick by brick from my insomnia and ambition, was home. It wasn't family dinners. It wasn't matching last names. It was purpose. Grit. Resilience. Mine." I walked the halls slowly. My employees nodded as I passed. Some smiled. Others whispered behind their screens, but I could feel it. The respect. The recognition. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was here. Fully seen. Fully standing. A month passed before I saw Sarah again. She asked to meet for coffee. No blue umbrellas this time, just a regular shop with misted windows and the smell of cinnamon. She looked tired. Her ring finger was bare. We broke it off, she said quietly, not even waiting for me to ask. He changed after the party. He got defensive. Blamed me. Said I should have stopped you. You didn't even know what I was going to say. She smiled sadly. Didn't matter. He needed someone to blame, and he's not brave enough to look in the mirror. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't break anything. You just pulled back the curtain. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she reached into her coat and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo of me as a child, asleep on my grandfather's office couch, my drawings scattered around me. He sat beside me in the photo, watching me sleep with the softest look in his eyes. The kind of look I'd never once seen from my parents. I found it in an old box in Daniel's apartment, she said. Thought you'd want it. I blinked back the tears and nodded. Thank you. She leaned forward, her voice quiet. I think he always saw the light in you, even if they never did. Weeks turned into months. My company launched a mentorship program for underfunded women-led startups. I went on record donating to an organization that helped young girls develop business skills in underserved communities. Not for publicity, not for revenge, for alignment, for peace. I bought a new home, a warm one, with tall windows and a kitchen that smelled like vanilla and dreams. And on a quiet Sunday morning, as soft jazz filled the background, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It simply said, I see you now. No name, no context, just that. But this time I didn't need to know who it was from. I didn't need them to say more. Because I had already learned the truth. The loudest power doesn't come from shouting. It comes from being still in the storm and choosing your words only when they matter most. Epilogue. The world didn't shift overnight. My family didn't beg for forgiveness. But life, it realigned itself around truth. And when people tell my story, if they ever do, I hope they don't remember the mic drop or the court case. I hope they remember the girl who said nothing for years. And then one day, said just enough.
I'm Sarah, 25 years old, married to my wonderful husband Marcus, and a proud new mother to our 2-month-old daughter, Ella. Life had been good, busy, chaotic, but full of love. Marcus and I had our routine, and everything was falling into place. That is, until my brother Jacob came to stay with us. A little over a year ago, my mom called me, sounding frazzled as usual. Sarah, I can't do this anymore. Jacob's been out of control lately, and I need some space. Can he stay with you and Marcus for a while? It wasn't the first time Jacob had stayed with us, but this was different. My mom and Jacob were always butting heads, and I knew my brother was a handful. He was rebellious, impulsive, and prone to doing things that got him into trouble. But still, he was family, and I didn't want to turn him away. At first, I was hesitant. Marcus and I had just started our family, and I didn't know if we could handle an extra person in the house. But Jacob promised he would be helpful, and I figured it would only be temporary until he went off to college. So I agreed. Looking back now, I regret that decision. For the first year, things were fine. Jacob helped around the house, kept to himself mostly, and he even helped out with Ella when he could. It wasn't perfect, but I was trying to keep the peace, especially for Marcus, who never really understood the tension between me and Jacob. But as the months went by, I started to feel the strain of having him around. There was always this undercurrent of tension, this constant worry that something would set him off. Then came yesterday, the day everything fell apart. It was just me, Jacob, and Ella at home. Marcus was at work, and I had asked Jacob to look after Ella for a few minutes while I went to the bathroom. She was only 2 months old, so I knew Jacob could handle it. I trusted him. I had to trust him. After all, he was family. But when I stepped out of the bathroom, my heart stopped. I walked out to see Jacob at the top of the stairs, holding something wrapped in Ella's blanket. I couldn't process what I was seeing at first. Before I could even blink, Jacob stumbled and my daughter came tumbling down the stairs. Everything went black for a moment. My mind went into overdrive, but all I could think about was my daughter. Was she okay? My legs gave out from under me as I screamed and bolted for the stairs. The world moved in slow motion, and then I reached the bottom. But when I looked down, it wasn't Ella. It was a damn baby doll wrapped in her blanket. My breath caught in my chest. The relief was immediate, but then a wave of fury hit me like a freight train. I looked up to see Jacob, standing there cracking up, laughing, as if he just pulled off some brilliant stunt. "I can't believe that worked," he said, barely able to catch his breath from laughing so hard. My mind was blank for a moment. I couldn't process what was happening. He just laughed? He thought this was funny? You. I couldn't even finish my sentence. The anger and panic surged through me like a tidal wave. "What the hell is wrong with you, Jacob? That was my daughter. You could have hurt her." I was hysterical, shaking, barely able to get the words out as I screamed at him. "How could you do something so stupid? You don't joke about things like that. You don't mess with my daughter's life." Jacob tried to calm me down, but I couldn't hear him. He kept saying it was just a joke, that Ella was perfectly safe and sound in her room. But I couldn't think about that. All I could see was her falling down the stairs like a rag doll. I couldn't shake the image of that for even a second. "You need to pack your things, Jacob," I said through gritted teeth, "and get out of my house. Now." His face turned pale. He tried to apologize, begged me to calm down, but nothing he said could change how I felt in that moment. Couldn't let it go. I couldn't let him stay here anymore. Not after what he'd done. "Please," Jacob cried, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean it. I just thought it would be funny. I didn't mean to scare you. You don't get it," I screamed, tears filling my eyes. "This isn't just a prank. This could have killed her, Jacob. You don't joke about that. Ever." I grabbed my phone and called my mom, my hands shaking with fury. I told her exactly what happened, and her response was not what I expected. "Sarah, calm down. You're overreacting. It was just a prank. Jacob didn't mean any harm," she said dismissively, her voice cool and collected as if it was no big deal. My blood boiled. "I don't care if it was a prank. It was a stupid, dangerous joke. And I'm done, Mom. I'm done with this. Either you come get him or he's out on the street." My mom came to pick Jacob up, but when she left, she called me again. "Sarah, you've gone too far. You're being too harsh on him. He's just a dumb teenager who didn't think it through." The anger flared up again. How could she say that? How could she defend him after what he'd done? Even Marcus, when he came home, agreed with my mom. "He's a dumb kid, Sarah. He didn't mean any harm. You're being too hard on him. He deserves a second chance." I felt betrayed. My own husband, the father of my child, was taking Jacob's side. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand why no one saw what I saw, why no one could see how close my daughter came to being seriously hurt. How could they defend that? That night, as I sat alone in the dark, I started to question myself. Was I overreacting? Was I being too harsh? But in my heart, I knew the truth. It wasn't just a prank. It wasn't harmless fun. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And Jacob needed to learn that lesson the hard way. But now I was left with a choice. Did I really kick him out over a prank? Was I in the wrong? In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. My little brother, had crossed a line that I could never forget. I didn't care how old he was, how many times he apologized, or how sorry he said he was. I couldn't let him back into my home after that. Not until he learned what was truly at stake. But my mom didn't see it that way. She kept calling me, telling me I was being too harsh, that I should have given Jacob another chance. I didn't know how to explain to her that this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about responsibility. It was about Ella's safety. She couldn't understand that. And Marcus, well, he was on Jacob's side too. He kept saying that he didn't think I should have kicked him out, that it was just a prank. But I couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened. My daughter, my innocent little girl, could have been seriously hurt. And that was something I couldn't just ignore. I didn't sleep much that week. I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head, my heart racing every time I thought about what could have gone wrong. But then came the phone call that made everything even worse. The phone call came late in the evening. It was Jacob, his voice filled with desperation and regret. I hadn't expected him to reach out to me so soon after everything had happened. But there he was, calling me like he had something important to say. "Sarah," he said, his voice quiet but trembling, "I've been thinking a lot about everything. and I need to apologize again. I know what I did was stupid. I can't even begin to imagine how you felt when that happened. And I just want to make it right. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there in the silence, the weight of his words pressing down on me. My heart wavered for a second. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the memory of seeing Ella's blanket tumble down the stairs, thinking for a split second that it was her, made the anger flare up inside of me all over again. You don't get it, Jacob, I said finally, my voice cold. It wasn't just a prank. You don't mess with someone's child like that. You don't put someone you love in danger for the sake of a laugh. And you didn't even care. You thought it was funny. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear Jacob trying to find the right words. I didn't think it through, he admitted quietly. I wasn't thinking about what could have happened. I just wanted to get a reaction from you. I didn't mean to scare you or hurt Ella. But I get it now. I see how wrong it was. I swear, I never meant to make you feel like that. I felt the walls I had built around my emotions start to crack. Part of me wanted to be angry, wanted to keep him out of my life for what he had done. But another part of me still wanted to believe that he could change, that he could understand just how much I had to protect Ella. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. You scared me, Jacob, I said softly. You scared the hell out of me. That wasn't funny. That was reckless. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back. But I can't. All I can do is prove to you that I've learned from this. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I've changed. I didn't respond right away. Part of me was still hesitant, still wondering if this was just another empty apology. Could I really trust him again? Could I give him a second chance after everything that had happened? After a moment of silence, I said, I can't just forget it, Jacob. I can't pretend like everything's okay. I need time to process what happened. And so do you. I understand, he replied quickly. But I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. I need you to know that I'm sorry. I hung up the phone, not really knowing how I felt. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I wasn't even sure I could. But I was willing to think about it. I needed time, and I knew it would take time for Jacob to prove that he was truly sorry and that he had learned from his mistake. But as much as I hated to admit it, I knew I didn't want to cut him out of my life forever. He was my brother, and deep down, I knew that if he truly changed, he could still be part of my life. But the question remained, was I willing to risk trusting him again? The next few days were a blur. I kept thinking about Jacob's call, and his apology lingered in the back of my mind. I wanted to move forward, to find peace, but the hurt was still there. The image of Ella's blanket tumbling down the stairs, the fear that gripped me when I thought she was hurt, it stayed with me. It wasn't until a week later that I saw Jacob again. He came over to my house, quietly, cautiously, and asked if we could talk. He hadn't been pushing me. He'd given me space, which I appreciated. When I opened the door, I saw him standing there, holding a small bouquet of flowers in his hands. His face was sincere, but there was still a nervousness in his posture, as if he didn't know how I was going to react. Sarah, he said softly, his voice full of vulnerability. I know I messed up, and I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to show you that I've changed. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at him for a moment, trying to see the young man who had been my brother and not just the kid who had terrified me with that prank. I could see it in his eyes, the remorse, the regret. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but maybe it was enough to start moving forward. Jacob, I began, my voice softer now, what you did wasn't just a joke. It was dangerous, and it's going to take time for me to trust you again. I know, he said quickly, nodding. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, but I'm going to show you that I can do better. I can be better. He looked down at the flowers in his hand, then back up at me. I know it won't make up for what I did, but I wanted to do something for you, to show you I'm serious about making things right. I felt my heart soften just a little. The gesture, simple but sincere, wasn't about trying to erase what had happened. It was about showing me that he was trying to make up for it. And that meant something to me. Thank you, I said, taking the flowers from his hands. It's a start. Jacob stood there for a moment, waiting for me to say more. but I wasn't ready to forgive him completely yet. It wasn't a light switch that could just be flipped. Trust had been broken, and that couldn't just be repaired with flowers and words. But the first step had been taken. I need you to understand that this isn't something that's going to be fixed overnight, I told him. It'll take time, but I'm willing to try. For Ella, for us. Jacob's face lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude. I'll prove it, Sarah. Promise. And as I closed the door behind him, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we were on the path to rebuilding something real. But it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be fast. But for the first time since the prank, I felt like we could move forward. The weeks that followed were filled with ups and downs. Jacob continued to show up, more involved, more responsible, more aware of the weight of what had happened. He spent time with Ella, helping me out more around the house, and even started volunteering at a local community center. It was clear that he was trying to prove that he could be trusted again. I, on the other hand, kept my guard up. Every time he did something nice, something that seemed like he was trying to make amends, part of me felt relieved. But another part of me couldn't forget what had happened. I couldn't shake the fear that it would all come crashing down again. But slowly, over time, the tension began to ease. Jacob's actions began to speak louder than his words. He was proving himself bit by bit. And while I still wasn't ready to completely let go of the past, I could see that he had learned from his mistake. And one day, months later, as we sat together at the kitchen table, Ella asleep in her crib, I looked at Jacob and realized something. I had seen the change in him, not just in his actions, but in his maturity. He had grown. He had become someone I could trust again. I'm proud of you, Jacob, I said softly. You've come a long way. He smiled, a genuine, grateful smile. Thanks, Sarah. I've been trying, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. We were all healing, slowly but surely. As the weeks passed, I thought that maybe, just maybe, things could go back to normal. Jacob was proving himself, trying hard to show that he understood the gravity of what he'd done. I kept my guard up, but I was willing to let the healing process unfold. The road to forgiveness wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't fast, but we were moving in the right direction. However, I knew the real test would come when something big happened again. Was I ready to let go of my fear? Was I ready to let Jacob back into my life fully? I didn't know. One afternoon, a few months after Jacob's return, I got the call that would make me question everything. It was a typical day, quiet, and Marcus was at work. Ella had just finished her nap, and I was sitting with her in my arms, trying to catch up on some housework. The phone rang, breaking the silence, and I picked it up without thinking. Hello! It was Jacob's voice, and the moment I heard it, something in my gut tightened. Sarah, I need to talk to you. Something happened. My heart dropped. I could hear the panic in his voice, the same nervous energy that had plagued him before, and I braced myself for what was coming next. What happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though my heart was racing. I made a mistake. A big one. His voice cracked, and I could hear the regret in every word. I messed up, and I'm scared you're going to hate me again. My breath caught in my throat. Jacob, what did you do? Please just come to the park. I'll explain everything, I swear. I didn't mean for this to happen, he pleaded, his voice desperate. I didn't even think twice. I grabbed Ella's diaper bag, rushed out the door, and headed to the park. My mind was racing. What could Jacob have done now? Had he really learned from the prank? Had he done something again to hurt my trust in him? Was it possible he was back to his old ways? When I arrived at the park, I saw Jacob sitting on the bench, his head down, his hands gripping his knees tightly. He didn't look like the confident, mischievous teenager I had once known. He looked broken. Jacob, I said softly as I approached, but he didn't look up at first. He just stayed still, as if he were bracing himself for the worst. Sarah, I screwed up, he said finally, lifting his head. His eyes were red from crying, his face full of regret. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I didn't mean to hurt anyone again. This time, it's different. I sat down beside him, trying to steady my breathing. What happened, Jacob? What did you do? He paused for a long time before speaking. I was with my friends at the park. We were messing around and I thought it would be funny to prank them. He broke off, tears spilling down his cheeks. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I told them I could do a dangerous stunt, something crazy, just to get a laugh. And I did it. But I almost hurt myself. I fell and they had to help me up. I could have been seriously injured. I felt a wave of relief flood through me, but it didn't last long. Jacob, you're scaring me. That's not just a prank. That's reckless. You can't keep doing things like that. You've got to take responsibility for your actions. I know, he whispered. I know. But this time I realized it. I'm not the same person I was. I'm trying to change, Sarah. I've been working on myself. I'm not the same reckless teenager I was before. The vulnerability in his voice struck me hard. It wasn't just that he was apologizing again. It was the way he had admitted his mistake. The way he was taking responsibility. He was growing. Maybe not in a perfect, linear way, but he was taking steps forward. The realization hit me like a wave. I had to trust him again, at least a little. If he was truly trying to change, then I had to believe in that change. I had to give him the chance to show me. I'm scared to trust you again, Jacob, I said, my voice shaky with emotion. But I see that you're trying. You're not perfect, but no one is. If you keep proving that you're learning from your mistakes, we can work through this. But you've got to stop making reckless decisions. You can't keep doing this. I promise, Sarah, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. I won't mess up again. I can't. I won't let you down. As I looked at him, I realized that forgiving him wasn't about forgetting what happened. It wasn't about pretending that everything was fine. It was about giving him the opportunity to prove that he could grow, to prove that he could make better decisions. And maybe that was all I could ask for. I believe you, I said, my voice trembling. But this is your last chance, Jacob. I'm giving you this one shot to make things right. Jacob nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Sarah. I won't let you down. After that day, Jacob made a conscious effort to prove that he was serious about his growth. He stayed focused on his responsibilities and became more involved in family activities. Marcus noticed the change too. There was a sense of respect in the air that hadn't been there before, a quieter, more thoughtful version of Jacob. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when I still worried, moments when I questioned whether or not he had truly changed. But slowly, the tension between us faded. The bond that had been broken was mended, piece by piece, as Jacob continued to show that he was learning from his mistakes. One evening, several months later, Jacob sat down with me on the porch while Marcus was inside putting Ella to bed. I'm grateful for this second chance, Sarah, Jacob said, his voice steady. You didn't have to forgive me. I know I messed up, but you've taught me that family is about accountability, about making things right no matter how hard it is. I smiled softly, feeling the weight of those words. I didn't forgive you for me, Jacob. I did it for Ella, for our family. But you have to understand that trust is earned. It doesn't happen overnight. I know, he replied quietly, and I'm working every day to earn it. And in that moment, I realized that I was finally starting to see the brother I had always hoped for. A brother who wasn't just reckless, but someone who understood the responsibility of being a part of this family. As time passed, we healed. Not just Jacob and me, but the whole family. We weren't perfect, but we were trying. And that's what mattered. We had learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt. That forgiveness was possible when it was earned. And above all, that family was worth fighting for. The door slammed shut behind me with a cold finality, the echo ricocheting off the barren walls of the room. I spun around, disbelief and fury surging through me as the metallic click of the lock sealed my fate. My father stood on the other side, his face pale but resolute. This is for your own good, Claire, he said. For my own good? I shouted, slamming my fists against the door. You locked me in here. What's wrong with you? Behind him, my mother averted her eyes, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare. My younger sister, Lily, peeked out from behind her, her expression a mix of guilt and fear. They left without another word, their footsteps fading down the corridor. I was 24 years old, a successful woman with a career, friends, and a life I'd built on my own terms. But none of that mattered to my family anymore, not after the accusations. I sank to the floor, my mind racing through the events of the past week. My father's company, a tech empire he had built from nothing, had been hit by a devastating data breach. Trade secrets worth millions were leaked to competitors, and the fallout had been swift and brutal. It wasn't long before Aaron, my cousin and my father's right-hand man, discovered an email trail pointing to me as the culprit. The evidence was fake. I knew it, and deep down I suspected Aaron knew it too. But he had always resented my position in the family, envying the trust my father had placed in me. "Claire," my father had said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "How could you? After everything I've done for you?" I had pleaded, begged them to believe me. But Aaron's evidence was damning, and my family was too shaken to see the truth. The room they locked me in was cold and unwelcoming, its bare walls a stark contrast to the warmth of the home I had grown up in. A narrow cot was pushed into one corner. A small window with iron bars too high to reach offered a sliver of light, and a bucket in the corner served as a cruel reminder of my captivity. I paced the room, my anger growing with every step. How could they do this to me? I wasn't a child, and I wasn't a criminal. But no matter how many times I replayed the argument in my head, the outcome was always the same. My family had chosen to believe Aaron over me. By the second day, desperation set in. Food was slid through a slot in the door twice a day, and no one spoke to me. My voice was raw from shouting, my fists bruised from pounding on the unyielding steel. I realized then that no one was coming to save me. If I wanted to clear my name, I'd have to do it myself. I began searching the room, inspecting every crack and crevice for something, anything, that could help me escape. It was beneath the cot that I found it, a loose floorboard. Underneath the floorboard was a notebook, its cover worn and the pages filled with hurried, messy handwriting. As I flipped through it, my blood ran cold. The notebook wasn't mine, but the contents were damning. Plans for the data breach, detailed accounts of bribes and blackmail, it was all here, and Aaron's name was scrawled across multiple pages. My hands trembled as I realized what this meant. Aaron hadn't just framed me. He had been plotting against my father's company for years. The notebook was my lifeline. If I could get it to my father, he'd have to believe me. But first, I needed to get out of this room. I returned to the loose floorboard, prying it up further in hopes of finding more. Instead, I uncovered a narrow, dark tunnel leading down into the unknown. It wasn't exactly inviting, but it was my only option. Grabbing the notebook, I slipped into the tunnel, my heart pounding as I crawled forward into the darkness. The air in the tunnel was thick and damp, the walls close enough to scrape my shoulders as I moved. I had no idea where it led, but staying in that room wasn't an option. The further I crawled, the more I noticed strange markings carved into the walls, symbols and diagrams that looked ancient and cryptic. My unease grew, but I pressed on. After what felt like an eternity, I reached a small wooden door. I pushed it open cautiously, stepping into what appeared to be an old storage room. The room was filled with dusty boxes and cobweb-covered shelves, but it was what sat on the central table that caught my attention. A stack of old letters bearing my family's crest. I opened the top letter, and as I read, my heart sank. It detailed a secret my family had kept for generations. A deal made with a powerful, shadowy organization to secure their wealth and influence. The price? One family member sacrificed every few generations. And now it was my turn. The letters were brittle with age, their ink faded but still legible. Each word seemed to press heavier on my chest, confirming a truth I had never imagined. My family's success wasn't built solely on hard work and ingenuity. It was built on a pact, a cursed legacy that demanded blood. The most recent letter, dated just 2 months ago, outlined the situation in detail. It mentioned the upcoming sacrifice, the name conspicuously absent but unmistakably referring to me. My father's note at the bottom sealed my fate. "We have no choice but to protect the family. Anger boiled inside me, threatening to consume every rational thought. This wasn't about Aaron's schemes or a breach of trust. My family had condemned me to this fate long before the data leak. I folded the letters and shoved them into my jacket alongside the notebook. Every instinct told me to run, but the storage room wasn't connected to the outside world. It was another layer of isolation. I began exploring the space, searching for an exit. A rusted ladder in the corner led to a trapdoor in the ceiling, faint light seeping through the cracks. My breath quickened as I climbed, hope surging with every step. The trapdoor groaned as I pushed it open, revealing a small hatch in the middle of a grassy field. I emerged into the cool night air, the vastness of the forest stretching before me. Freedom was close, but so was danger. The stillness of the forest was unnerving. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. I didn't know where I was, but I couldn't afford to stay put. As I moved through the dense woods, a chilling sound reached my ears. Distant voices. They were calling my name. Aaron's men. Panic gripped me, but I forced myself to keep moving, my footsteps as quiet as possible. The forest became a maze, the shadows stretching and twisting as moonlight filtered through the trees. I heard the crack of a branch too close behind me. They were gaining on me. Just as my lungs began to burn and my legs threatened to give out, I spotted it. A cabin, half hidden by the undergrowth. Its roof sagged, and the windows were boarded up, but it was shelter. I darted inside, closing the door softly behind me. The interior was just as abandoned as it looked. Dusty furniture, peeling wallpaper, and an air of desolation. I pressed myself against the wall, clutching the notebook and letters tightly as I listened. The voices outside grew louder, closer. Spread out, one of them barked. She has to be here somewhere. I searched the cabin for anything that could help me defend myself. A rusted poker by the fireplace was the best I could find. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Footsteps creaked on the porch. My breath caught as the door handle jiggled. "She's not in there," one voice said. "Check anyway," another replied. The door swung open, and a flashlight beam swept through the room. I crouched behind a broken sofa, every muscle in my body taut. The man took a step inside, his heavy boots echoing against the wooden floor. Just as the flashlight's beam passed over me, a shout from outside drew his attention. "Hey, over here!" He turned and ran out, slamming the door behind him. My heart thundered in my chest as I waited, afraid to move. After what felt like an eternity, the voices faded into the distance. I knew they'd be back. This wasn't over. As I prepared to leave the cabin, I heard a soft shuffle behind me. I spun around, poker raised, and came face to face with a man. He was older, his face weathered and lined, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "Easy there," he said, holding up his hands. "I'm not one of them. Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Name's Jack," he said, "and I think we might have a common enemy." Jack explained that he had been watching Aaron's men for weeks, tracking their movements and piecing together their plans. "I don't know the whole story," he said, "but I know enough to recognize you're in trouble." I hesitated. Trusting anyone felt dangerous, but I didn't have many options. "If you know about them, then you know I can't stay here," I said. Jack nodded. "You're right, but if you want to stop them, you'll need help. And lucky for you, I'm pretty good at dealing with guys like them." We spent the next few hours coming up with a plan. Jack's knowledge of the forest and Aaron's operations was invaluable. He showed me maps, marked with routes and hiding spots, and explained how we could evade capture. "We'll need to get this evidence to someone who can use it," Jack said, tapping the notebook. "You've got enough here to take Aaron down, but only if it gets into the right hands." I nodded, determination replacing fear. "Let's do it." Jack and I set out at dawn, moving through the forest with caution. Every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig set my nerves on edge, but Jack's calm presence kept me focused. We were heading toward the nearest town, where Jack claimed to have a contact who could help. But as we neared the edge of the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. Before we reached the town, Aaron's men found us. It happened fast, shouts, gunfire, and a mad dash through the trees. Jack pulled me behind a boulder, his rifle steady as he returned fire. "Stay low," he barked. I clutched the notebook tightly, my heart pounding as bullets whizzed past. This was a fight we couldn't afford to lose. The forest echoed with chaos, shouts, gunfire, and the crunch of leaves under hurried steps. I crouched behind the boulder, every breath sharp and shallow, gripping the notebook like it was my lifeline. Jack fired back with precision, his calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the mayhem around us. "Claire," he yelled over his shoulder. "We can't hold here for long. You need to run." "I'm not leaving you," I shot back, my voice shaking. "You have to," he insisted. "They're not after me. They want you and that notebook. If they get it, everything's lost." I hesitated, torn between my survival instincts and the loyalty I felt toward the man who had risked so much to help me. Jack didn't wait for my response. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a flare, and launched it high into the sky. The bright light exploded above the treetops, momentarily disorienting our pursuers. "Go now," he barked. I didn't look back. I ran blindly through the forest, branches clawing at my face and arms as I pushed through the undergrowth. The sound of gunfire faded behind me, but I knew it wouldn't take long for them to follow. The forest grew denser, the trees pressing in on all sides. My lungs burned, and my legs screamed for rest, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when I was so close to exposing the truth. Up ahead, I spotted a river cutting through the woods. Without hesitation, I plunged into the icy water, letting the current carry me downstream. The cold was a shock to my system, but it masked my trail and gave me a fleeting sense of safety. When I finally dragged myself onto the riverbank, shivering and exhausted, I found myself at the edge of a small farm. A weathered barn loomed in the distance, its doors slightly ajar. I stumbled toward it, desperate for shelter. Inside, I found a woman stacking hay bales. She looked up, startled as I entered. "Who are you?" she demanded, eyeing me warily. "My name's Claire," I said, my voice hoarse. "I need help. Please." She studied me for a moment before nodding. "Come inside. But if you're bringing trouble, you'd better warn me now." The woman, who introduced herself as Martha, didn't ask many questions. She handed me a dry blanket and a cup of tea, her sharp eyes assessing me as I warmed myself by the fire. "I saw that flare earlier," she said. "Trouble in the woods?" I nodded. "They're after me. My cousin. He's trying to cover up crimes that could destroy my family and ruin lives. I have evidence, but I need to get it to someone who can help." Martha frowned. "Sounds like you've stepped into a hornet's nest. Lucky for you, I know someone who might be able to help." Martha called an old friend, a man named Victor, who lived in the nearby town. He was a journalist, known for uncovering corruption and exposing those who thought they were untouchable. "We'll take my truck," Martha said. "Victor's place isn't far, but we'll need to keep a low profile." The drive to town was tense. Every passing car felt like a threat, every shadow a potential ambush. Martha's grip on the steering wheel was tight, her eyes scanning the road for signs of trouble. When we arrived at Victor's modest home, he opened the door cautiously, his face lighting up with recognition when he saw Martha. Victor listened intently as I explained everything, the accusations, the betrayal, and the contents of the notebook. When I handed it to him, his eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. This is incredible," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "If this is all true, your cousin is looking at a prison sentence that will outlast his career." "It is true," I said firmly, "but we have to move fast. He has people everywhere. If he finds out we're here..." Victor nodded. "I'll start drafting the story tonight. This will hit every major outlet by morning." Just as Victor began his work, Martha's phone buzzed. She frowned as she read the message. "They know you're here," she said grimly. "Aaron's men are in town, asking questions." Panic surged through me, but Victor remained calm. "We'll handle it. I've got a safe room in the basement. Stay there while I finish this." Martha and I descended into the dimly lit basement, the air thick with tension. The sound of tires screeching outside shattered the quiet. We heard heavy footsteps above us, voices barking orders. "They're inside," Martha whispered. I clutched the notebook tightly, my mind racing for a way out. Suddenly, there was a loud bang as the door to the basement was kicked open. "Run!" Martha shouted, shoving me toward a hidden passage at the back of the room. The passage was narrow and dark, leading to an alley behind the house. I emerged into the night, my heart pounding as I sprinted down the street. Behind me, I could hear the chaos unfolding inside Victor's house. I didn't stop running until I reached the bus station. The next morning, Victor's story was everywhere. Headlines screamed Aaron's name, detailing the corruption and betrayal that had almost gone unnoticed. The notebook's evidence was undeniable, and within hours, authorities were raiding his offices. Aaron was arrested, his smug confidence replaced by fury as cameras captured his downfall. With Aaron behind bars, my name was finally cleared. My family, overwhelmed by guilt, tried to apologize, but the damage was done. I moved to a new city, determined to rebuild my life. The scars of betrayal remained, but they were a reminder of my strength. A strength no one could take from me. And for the first time in years, I felt free. It was nearing dusk when I first heard the sound, soft at first, like the faintest echo of heartbreak. I almost didn't notice it over the hum of the bustling street, but as I approached the corner, the sound grew louder. A child sobbing. Turning down a dimly lit alley, I found him. A boy, no older than 6, sitting on the cold pavement with his knees pulled to his chest. His small body trembled, and his face was streaked with dirt and tears. His clothes were too thin for the cool evening, tattered and grimy as if he'd been wandering for days. "Hey there," I called out softly, crouching down to his level. "Are you okay?" At the sound of my voice, he flinched, his head snapping up. His eyes, wide, dark, and filled with terror, locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. "I won't hurt you," I said, keeping my voice steady and calm. "I just want to help. Are you lost?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze darted around the alley as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "Please don't let them find me." A chill ran down my spine. "Who's after you?" I asked, trying to keep my own fear from showing. "The bad men," he said, his voice cracking. "They took my mom." Those 6 words shattered me. Without hesitation, I reached out my hand. "Come with me," I said. "You're safe now." The boy hesitated, his small hand trembling as he reached for mine. When his fingers finally clasped mine, I felt how cold they were. Too cold for such a little boy. "What's your name?" I asked as we walked toward my apartment, his steps faltering with exhaustion. "Oliver," he murmured. "I'm Catherine," I said, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. "We'll figure this out, okay?" Oliver didn't respond, but he clung to me like a lifeline. When we got to my apartment, I led him inside and immediately wrapped him in a blanket. He sat on the couch, watching me cautiously as I rummaged through the kitchen for something to feed him. "Do you want soup?" I asked, holding up a can. He nodded, his big eyes never leaving mine. As he ate, I sat across from him, trying to piece together what little he'd told me. "Can you tell me more about the bad men?" I asked gently. Oliver shook his head, his grip tightening around the spoon. "They'll hurt us if I tell," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one's going to hurt you," I promised. "You're safe here." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if it was true. That night, as Oliver slept on the couch, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Its engine idled, and though I couldn't see the driver, I could feel their eyes on my apartment. My gut told me this wasn't a coincidence. Couldn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, the dim glow of the streetlights illuminating the black SUV parked across the street. It didn't move, the engine humming faintly in the quiet night. Every so often, the curtain would twitch, and I'd catch myself scanning the room, paranoid that they'd somehow see Oliver inside. He looked so small curled up on the couch, his little chest rising and falling with each breath. Morning came slowly, and with it, a renewed sense of dread. Oliver stirred awake as sunlight streamed through the blinds. He blinked at me, his face still pale but softer now, less guarded. "Are they still out there?" he asked, his voice barely audible. I hesitated before responding, not wanting to scare him. "I don't know," I admitted, "but they can't hurt you here." He didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press the matter. After breakfast, I gave him some crayons and an old sketch pad I had lying around, hoping it would keep his mind occupied. As he drew quietly at the table, I tried to figure out what to do next. Calling the police seemed like the logical option, but something about Oliver's fear gave me pause. What if the people after him were powerful enough to infiltrate even the authorities? My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. My heart jumped into my throat as I glanced through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood on the other side, his expression unreadable. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice muffled but firm. "We need to talk about the boy." My hand froze on the doorknob. How did they know my name? My stomach churned as the man knocked again, louder this time. "I know you're in there," he said, his tone growing sharper. "This isn't a negotiation." I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Who were these people? How did they find us so quickly? "Oliver," I whispered, crouching beside him at the table. His eyes widened at the fear in my voice. "I need you to hide. Okay? Right now. Go to the bedroom and lock the door." He nodded without a word and scampered away, clutching his sketchpad to his chest. The knocking turned into pounding. "If you don't open this door, we'll come in ourselves." Desperation overtook me. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. "There's a man outside my door," I said, my voice trembling. "He's trying to break in." The operator assured me officers were on the way, but I knew it might be too late by then. "Last chance," the man barked. I grabbed a heavy candlestick from the table, my heart pounding as the door burst open. Two men stepped inside, their faces cold and calculating. One of them spotted me immediately and lunged. I swung the candlestick with all my strength, catching him across the jaw. He staggered back, cursing, but his partner advanced. Before he could reach me, the wail of police sirens filled the air. The men exchanged glances before retreating, slamming the door behind them. After the police left, assuring me they'd increase patrols, I locked every window and double-checked every door. But their reassurances felt hollow. Oliver emerged from the bedroom, his face pale. "Are they gone?" he asked, his voice trembling. "For now," I said, pulling him into a hug. "But we need to figure out what's going on." That evening, as Oliver slept, I searched through his small backpack again, hoping for answers. That's when I found it. A battered leather journal with pages filled with hurried notes. The first page was covered in strange symbols, followed by a list of names: Michael Gray, Elena Brooks, Arthur Kane. Flipping further, I found scattered entries written in shaky handwriting. "They're watching us. Gray Phoenix is everywhere. Trust no one." A chill ran down my spine as I realized this wasn't just a child running from a bad situation. This was something far darker and more dangerous than I'd imagined. The next morning, I called Jacob, an old friend and investigative journalist. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy. "Catherine? It's been a while. I need your help," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "It's about a boy I found. He's in trouble, and there are people after him." "People like who?" I hesitated, then explained everything: the black SUV, the men who broke in, the journal. Jacob listened in silence, but when I mentioned the name Arthur Kane, his tone changed. "Kane is bad news," he said. "He's tied to a syndicate called Gray Phoenix. Trafficking, money laundering, political manipulation, you name it, they do it." "What does that have to do with Oliver?" "My guess? His mom stumbled onto something they didn't want her to see. If they're after him, it's because he's a loose end." Jacob agreed to dig into the journal, and within hours he called me back with a lead. "There's a name in there, Elena Brooks. She used to work for Gray Phoenix before she blew the whistle on one of their operations." I found an address. That evening, I drove across town to meet Elena. The address led me to a small, run-down apartment complex. I knocked on the door, and a woman answered, her face pale and drawn. "Elena?" I asked. She glanced at me warily. "Who are you?" I held up the journal. "I'm a friend of Lily. She's in trouble, and so is her son." Elena's expression softened. She stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. "If Lily's in trouble, we don't have much time." Elena led me into her cramped apartment, where every window was covered with thick curtains, and every door had multiple locks. She moved quickly, her hands trembling as she cleared off a cluttered table. "Sit," she said, motioning to a chair. "You said Lily's son is with you? Is he safe?" "For now," I said. "But men broke into my apartment last night looking for him. They mentioned something about Gray Phoenix." At the name, Elena froze. Her eyes darted toward the window as if she expected someone to burst through at any moment. "They don't stop," she said, her voice low. "Once you're on their radar, they'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Lily must have found something huge for them to come after her like this." "She left behind this journal," I said, sliding it across the table. "It has names, dates, symbols. I was hoping you could help me make sense of it." Elena flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing. "This isn't just a journal. It's a roadmap. These names, Michael Gray, Arthur Kane, they're some of the most powerful people in Gray Phoenix. If Lily documented their operations, she's sitting on a goldmine of evidence. Then why hasn't she gone to the authorities?" I asked. "Because Gray Phoenix has people everywhere," Elena said bitterly. "Police, politicians, even the media. You can't trust anyone. That's why Lily ran. She knew they'd kill her before she could expose them." "Do you think she's still alive?" Elena hesitated. "If they haven't found what they're looking for yet, maybe. But if you have her son." She trailed off, her meaning clear. I felt a cold pit of fear settle in my stomach. "They'll stop at nothing to get to him," I said. Elena nodded. "And now they'll come for you, too." After a tense silence, Elena stood and crossed the room to a small safe hidden behind a loose floorboard. She opened it and retrieved a small flash drive. "This," she said, holding it up, "is what Lily risked everything for. It's a complete record of Gray Phoenix's operations, transactions, names, locations. It's enough to take them down. Why haven't you used it?" I asked. Elena's face hardened. "Because if I did, I'd be dead. I barely escaped the last time I tried to expose them. And if they ever find out I still have this..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. I took the flash drive from her, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. "What do we do with it?" Elena sighed. "You need to get it into the hands of someone you trust. But be careful. Once they know you have this, they'll come after you with everything they've got." I left Elena's apartment with the flash drive tucked securely in my bag. Driving back to the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Every car that lingered behind me felt like a threat, every shadow a potential ambush. When I arrived, Oliver ran to me, his small arms wrapping tightly around my waist. "I thought you weren't coming back," he said, his voice trembling. "I'll always come back," I said, ruffling his hair. That night, I examined the flash drive, its contents confirming everything Elena had said. It was all there, proof of human trafficking, political corruption, money laundering. And at the center of it all was Arthur Kane, the shadowy figure who seemed to control everything. I knew then that this wasn't just about keeping Oliver safe. This was about taking down an empire. The next morning, the peace of the cabin shattered. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Peeking out the window, I saw two black SUVs pull up, and my heart dropped. "Oliver," I called, keeping my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "Go to the closet and stay there until I come for you. Don't make a sound." He obeyed without question, his small face pale with fear. Moments later, the front door burst open, and 3 men stormed in. "Where's the boy?" one of them barked, his eyes scanning the room. "You're not taking him," I said, stepping forward. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling. The man smirked. "You really think you can stop us?" I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed the frying pan from the stove and swung it with all my strength, catching him across the face. He stumbled back, cursing, but his companions advanced. The fight was chaotic, but adrenaline and sheer desperation kept me going. Just as one of the men cornered me, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The men fled, leaving the cabin in disarray. The police arrived minutes later, their flashing lights illuminating the wreckage. I explained what had happened, but their skepticism was clear. "You really think these men were after the boy?" one officer asked. "I don't think," I said. "I know." The officers promised to increase patrols in the area, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. Gray Phoenix wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. That night, as Oliver clung to me, I made a decision. We couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. It was time to go on the offensive. With the flash drive in hand, I knew our only chance was to expose Gray Phoenix publicly. But doing so without getting caught or killed was going to take careful planning. I called Jacob. "I need your help," I said. "This flash drive has everything. Names, transactions, locations. If we can get it out to the public, we can take them down." "That's risky," Jacob said. "If they realize what you're doing, they'll come for you, and fast." "I don't have a choice," I replied. "They're going to keep coming anyway." Jacob agreed to meet us at a remote location. It wasn't safe to stay at the cabin any longer. I packed what little we had, grabbed the flash drive and journal, and left before sunrise. The drive to Jacob's location was tense. Every car on the road felt like a threat, and Oliver's silence in the back seat only made the tension worse. When we arrived, Jacob greeted us with a grim expression. "You weren't followed?" he asked. "I don't think so," I said. But as we began to discuss the plan, headlights appeared in the distance. My heart sank. "They found us," I whispered. Jacob grabbed his laptop, hastily setting up the live stream we had planned for days later. "If we're going to do this, we do it now," he said. I nodded, helping him upload the files while Oliver hid behind the couch. As the files began to upload, Jacob started narrating everything. The names, the crimes, the corruption. He broadcasted live on every platform he could, sharing the evidence with the world. "They're here," I shouted as I saw SUVs pull up outside. Men in suits poured out, armed and determined. I grabbed a chair and barricaded the door while Jacob continued the stream. "We need more time," he said. "We don't have it," I replied, bracing for the inevitable. The door burst open, and chaos erupted. I fought off the first man who entered, swinging a heavy lamp at his head. Jacob tried to shield his laptop as more men stormed in. Oliver stayed hidden, clutching the whistle I'd given him. When one of the men got too close, he blew it with all his might, startling them and buying us precious seconds. The police arrived just in time, sirens blaring and lights flashing. Officers swarmed the house, arresting the intruders and securing the evidence. In the aftermath, one of the officers approached me with news. "We found something during the raid," he said. "A location that matches one of the addresses on your drive. It was a warehouse on the outskirts of town. They believed Lily might be there." Oliver clutched my hand as we drove to the site, his face pale but determined. "Do you think she's okay?" he asked. "We'll find her," I said, trying to sound confident. The raid on the warehouse was swift and brutal. Inside, the police found Lily, barely conscious but alive. When she saw Oliver, her face crumpled with emotion. "Mom!" Oliver cried, running to her. Lily collapsed to her knees, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I thought I'd lost you," she sobbed. I watched them reunite, tears streaming down my face. The weight of everything we'd been through finally hit me, but seeing them together made it all worth it. The evidence from the flash drive, combined with the arrests, dismantled Gray Phoenix. Arthur Kane and his associates were convicted on multiple charges, their empire crumbling under the weight of their crimes. The story went viral, and public outrage led to widespread reforms. Survivors began coming forward, inspired by the bravery of Lily and Oliver. Months later, I visited Lily and Oliver in their new home, deep in witness protection. They were safe, happy, and beginning to heal. "You saved us," Lily said, hugging me tightly. "No," I replied. "You saved yourselves. I just helped." As I watched Oliver play in the yard, his laughter filling the air, I felt a sense of peace. The journey had been harrowing, but it had led to something beautiful, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always hope.